And it takes me to the next part of how we begin to appreciate life more by being involved in these entrances and exits from life. And not so long ago, families took care of their own. And everyone chipped in, even the youngest would chip in. This tended to bond them together and give them an appreciation for each other, an appreciation which would override the impulses we have once in a while to get angry at each other, because in the back of your mind, death is real. And it's only after people die that you have the wish back. If you could have it all over again, all the silly little things that you exchanged between each other at times had never happened, certainly in the way that they happened. We live in an age of nihilism, an induced nihilism, a part of the side effect of the breakup of the family unit, which was essential for this next part of the New World Order, as Bush Sr. said, and no one complained that he was making out a conspiracy theory when he stated it on national television. The family unit had to go, obviously. So people don't appreciate each other anymore. Life is cheap now. It's become so cheap. And very artificial. So remote from reality. It's the dream of Plato when he talked about the beehives that would bring about the republic, the utopia of the elite. Because in a city-type system, which is all artificial from top to bottom, you can alter the culture. Culture is plastic, it's fluid. And you can alter it. Right is wrong, wrong is right. It's whatever they say so at the time that becomes the norm. And we have seen the devaluation of life go on for a long time, till we're now selling body parts like pounds of flesh at a butcher shop. And the fetuses go on sale, and the spinal columns go on sale for $5,000 in good condition. The dead are taken care of in hospitals before they die, and all you have to do is visit them once in a while, where they're cleaned up, propped up, drugged, and you leave them some flowers or some fruit they can't eat, and walk out again at the end of the visiting hour. Then they're dead. The undertaker takes care of things. You don't have to deal with anything. You just pop in to see old so-and-so, all dressed up in the best suit, in a casket for about an hour. And then it's over. It's all made so hygienic and sterile. There's no care involved. All we have is a sort of fuzzy recollection afterwards of what transpired. Whereas when you're involved with the person, you go through milestones yourself. Milestones begin when you're born. From when you say Dada or Mama. I guess Dada's out the picture now in single-parent families. And that's one milestone. And you go through different milestones as you grow up. When people die, you tend to see yourself, a bit of yourself, go with them. And also as the gradual acceptance comes that life isn't so cheap after all, that life itself is precious. When you understand that life is precious, then you stop treating each other quite so bitterly with petty jealousies and anger and conditioned responses to each other that siblings often have. Even years later, they fall back into patterns of dominance. and the attempt to dominate, and the petty little things that occur. Yet, personally, if you take it personally, the death of a person, especially a parent, you do reflect over your own life. It brings mortality closer to you. You realize that as you saw them, you are becoming. Children have a hard time, almost impossible time, of imagining death for themselves personally. It's a remote thing that happens to others. That's how it is. Even getting old. And old, I can remember thinking someone at 30 was old, or even 20. Until you hit that age yourself and you say, my goodness, what happened to the time? Then you look back and say, I don't want to remember all the things that happened during that time. But these are the milestones we go through. People who die and who are dying change too when they know they're dying. We all have these personas we project outwardly. It's never the same as the one that the people who watch us and see us see. It's always different. Because we all have a little shield to protect us from being vulnerable. Because it certainly can be a cruel world out there too. Yet when someone knows they're dying, all the little things they used to be obsessed about disappear. The things that had to be in their place, in the right place, or put back and so on, disappear. They don't talk about those things that they own. It doesn't matter anymore. If anything, their thoughts are on the things which influenced them, people who influenced them, their friends, some of whom they've never seen for many years. Because that's what life's about. It's not what we have or what we accumulate. We can all accumulate, no matter what class level we live in. It's the people who affect us that come back to us in our minds at certain times. That's what's important. In fact, that's all that's important. Something we've lost. We're lost because we're brought up in a commercialized world where happiness is the next bar of soap, as some nude woman scrubs herself in the bathtub on a television set, or the next toothpaste, or whatever it is they're pushing. And there's nothing further from the truth. Because some kindness at times, and some opening up of true communication between person to person can embed itself in the mind or the minds of those who exchange thoughts and ideas, not simply exchanging data that's been downloaded into them. Normal people have been blunted emotionally by the system they've grown up in. The emotions are still there, they can't express them, they're not sure if they should at times. Because we have been almost depersonalized, dehumanized in this culture that had to be created for the elite to bring us to the next step, so that we wouldn't protest the grotesque things which are happening and we've accepted now as the new norm. You get sick of hearing about what Hitler did in World War II when the Soviet system killed many more, when other governments in past ages had done the same, often on their own people. And if I had my way, I'd have monuments to every massacre, every Holocaust brought on from governments in every nation, to remind the people that servants are supposed to be exactly that, not your masters, because they always attract the psychopath who ends up in charge with fellow psychopaths, and they always go off in the same direction. They have no choice. And since they're terrified of the bulk of the populace, the humans, the normal humans that have emotions and loves and dreams and sorrows and guilts, something that the psychopath doesn't understand, then they must try and keep the normal people in check, and eventually they must completely control them. So for all those listening, and the young ones too, because I get a lot of mail from young people who are going through tough times in a very crazy world that's partly science fiction to them, the way it's presented to them. They've been conditioned through tremendous scientifically created systems in the school that Bertrand Russell said would literally condition them for life. They're battling that in response to them coming in to society after school and trying to fit in. Running after the big carrot that's held out in the stick that they're supposed to run for and work for, and one day you'll make it, son, if you just work hard enough. The big lie. And then they start blaming themselves when they can't make it. They become depressed. Some of them fall into drugs, the street drugs. Others have already been put on the various drugs at school. So they write to me and tell me about their problems, what they're going through. And I try and answer them all, but there's so many come in from all over, as they try and hold on to something that's worth holding on to, because often they get to a stage where they cannot see any future for themselves. The Generation Xers that are written off, they're excess, a surplus. They want companionship. They don't know how to keep companionship. Whether it's male or female, they don't know now, because they've been taught to have conditioned responses to certain, even common language that's used, and to violently react against certain words and so on, Pavlovian style. Again, deliberate conditioning to make sure there's disruption. And so they are tremendously lonely going through life. And yet there's some hope there too, because they also tell me they've got so much out of what I've been telling them, they've stopped blaming themselves. And that's very important. Stop blaming yourself. You're not a failure. You are a side effect. You're feeling the side effects of a dysfunctional system. Something, and a time too, which was written about years ago, that would happen by those who planned it. You're seeing the side effect, the fallout around you. And knowing that can start giving you strength, because then you start blaming yourself. I saw this happen in Britain throughout the 70s even, when I used to come back to Britain from different countries. I watched people, I knew people who committed suicide because they lost their jobs. You switch on the media and it was happy time on the media. Same comedies would come on, same ads, bye, everybody's happy. Yet the opposite was really true at the time. Only now the suicides are becoming younger and younger. So life has been devalued. And people have been broken from the generations. The generations are separated from each other. Elderly people who used to pass on wisdom from one generation to the next are irrelevant now. They've been pushed out of the picture. And that was very important, very, very important, because that was part of the survival mechanism of peoples for thousands of years. The elders were respected because they had wisdom. They could warn, they could guide the young. The young don't have it anymore. They're guided by the mass media, the educational system, with Russell's scientific indoctrination, and the electronic brainwashing industry that controls their games and the internet, and with all the movies they watch with predictive programming. The fallout is everywhere. And it was predictable, because it was planned that way. Many books have been written at university level, written as far back as the 50s and 60s and 70s, on the coming disruptions within society as science took over control and decision-making and conditioning, where with more techniques of birth control, with the gradual acceptance and psychological indoctrination that the baby, or Latin for fetus, dehumanizing again, something which is human, is just like a wart. You can get rid of it and it's no big deal. The next step was to start on the elderly, put them off into the old exit homes, and it's no big deal. They're of no use. They are the useless eaters. Or as the United Nations say, a good citizen is a good producer-consumer. When you're elderly, you stop producing. Therefore, you're just a consumer. Therefore, etc., etc. We're lucky that some parts of the world, they still have family units, although they are under tremendous attack from what's now called the democratic system, being pushed by the West and the United Nations, where they still take care of each other to the end, knowing with confidence that when it's their time to go, their relatives and children will take care of them too, the natural way. Getting back to the temporary webmaster, I was trying to find something with an appropriate song for the end of this blurb. And when you look back on it, there's not many songs about your dads, because they've been put out the picture so much. There's stuff from the 18th century and 17th century, etc., when men had some stature, but as they've been devalued and humiliated through comedies and etc., there's nothing being churned out about them. So I looked through all these old songs and couldn't find anything except that when I hung up the guitar, as they say, years ago, to begin doing what I'm doing now, and I vowed never to play it again, at least till I was doing this, something very important. I also chucked out lots of old master tapes from studios of songs that I had got, published or had written for others, and I thought they were all gone, but I found one old cassette taken from a master I hadn't ditched yet. And I do these kind of things. I throw my past out as you go through phases and you become the new you, and you've written books, you've written poetry, you've written songs, you do different things in your life, you play on stage, you do session work, you play solo on stage, you work with groups on stage, you do it all, and each part's a different part of you in a sense, or at least with me. And years ago, I wrote a few songs and backed someone who wanted an album produced. And this was done in Philadelphia, a studio in Philadelphia. And so I was digging through all my old stuff to see if there's anything left at all with talking about dads. I found one which was never published. I wrote it in a cafe on the way down, because on the way she was going to visit her father, who was sick at the time. And she says, could you write something about, a dad, a father? I says, well, I hadn't really thought about it. So I scribbled this one down. As you do, you scribble lots of songs down and throw them in boxes, and then you throw them out or whatever. And really to keep her happy, I says, okay, I'll write something. And once we went into the studio, which was about 1 a.m, in fact, the time I arrived there, and the technicians were clearing away stuff and resetting up stuff. As they were setting up the mics and the volumes and so on, she says, why don't we sing that one you just wrote there? While they're setting the mics up, just to get the volume levels and so on just right. It was never meant to be recorded. And it's about a dad, you see. Even though it had bits of my dad in there, she says, your dad will be like everybody's dad, in a sense. And I knew what she meant, and that fathers project this little persona where they try and preserve what they see as a dignity to themselves, a separation. They don't like to be seen as vulnerable. And lots of them feel they'd like to have done more for their offspring, and they're on the defensive in case that's ever brought up. And yet really, under the circumstances, most of them do the best they can. Who are we to judge? As the Indians say, don't judge a man till you've walked a couple of miles in his moccasins. So forgive this little ditty song, but it's all I could find to do about dads. It wasn't meant to be published, as I say. It was just a first run through. It's the only time it was ever sung. Just to get the mic set up and the volume set up. But it's a dad song. And so it's for Laura, and it's for pretty well everybody else's dad, I guess. Life and death go together. Dying's part of living. And we all one day will face it. From Hamish and myself, it's good night. And may your God or your gods go with you.
Well, old man, I've come to talk. We can have a beer or go for a walk. I'm going away to a distant land. Let me help you with your coat, old man. Your defenses are all up before me. I can see the life in your eyes. Drop the bridge and let me in, just for a little while. Your talk is rough, it's just your way. Hide your feelings all away from me. But I know you care, I know you do. Come on, old mine, I'll have a beer or two. Your defenses are all up before me. I can see the life in your eyes. Drop the bridge and let me in, just for a little while. You never spoke much when I was a kid. Down the deepest mind you hid. You never had much of a life, old man, but your slaving made me what I am. Your defenses are all up before me. I can see the life in your eyes. Drop the bridge and let me in, just for a little while. Thanks for the crack at life, old dad. I got the chances you never had. I'll hug you now and be on my way. I love you, Dad, and that's all I gotta say. I love you, Dad, and that's all I